People think power announces itself loudly. It doesn't. Power whispers. Power smiles across dinner tables. Power passes salt with steady hands while deciding who will eat tomorrow. I learned that on the night my husband cleared his throat and said my name the way men do when they're about to erase you. But let me start where the wound was still pretending to be a bruise. I wore red that evening. Not the desperate kind. The quiet kind. The kind of red that says I remember who I was before I was told to be smaller. My dress hugged my waist just enough to remind myself that I still owned my body. Gold earrings kissed my neck when I moved. My hair was wrapped neatly, elegant, intentional. I looked like a woman who had arrived, even though I was walking into a room where I was never truly welcome. The house belonged to my husband's family. It always had, even after marriage. Their walls carried the weight of old money and older egos. Polished floors. Heavy curtains. The smell of tradition, and something sour underneath it. That evening's dinner was supposed to be a celebration. That's what they said. A family moment. A new chapter. Words that sound warm until you realize they're being used as knives. As I stepped inside, I felt it, that tightness behind the ribs. The kind your body gives you when your spirit has already seen the ambush. My husband, Cabello, stood near the window, phone pressed to his ear. Perfect suit. Perfect posture. A man raised to inherit rooms like this. He didn't look at me when I entered. That was the first sign. I'd been married to Cabello for 12 years. 12 years of learning the language of his silences. When he loved me, he touched my back absent-mindedly, as if claiming something that belonged to him but didn't need guarding. When he was planning something, he stopped touching me altogether. That night, his hands were empty. The dining table gleamed like it had been polished for an audience. My mother-in-law, Beatrice, sat at the head, already arranged like a queen expecting tribute. Her eyes met mine with the softness of a blade wrapped in silk. "Ah," she said. "You came. Not welcome. Not you look lovely. Just you came, as if attendance alone was a burden." I smiled anyway. Because women like me learn early, survival often begins with grace. As we sat, servants moved silently, placing plates that looked too expensive to be used for actual hunger. My brother-in-law laughed too loudly. My sister-in-law avoided my eyes. Everyone knew something. Everyone except me. Or maybe I knew. I just hadn't named it yet. Cabello finally sat beside me. He smelled like the cologne I bought him, the one he wore when he needed confidence. When he needed to be convincing. "Thank you for coming," he said softly. I turned to him. "We're married," I replied. "Where else would I be?" He didn't smile. That was the second sign. Dinner began with polite conversation, investments, properties, future plans spoken like scripture. I listened, nodded, played my role. The supportive wife. The beautiful addition. The woman who didn't ask questions. But inside, my thoughts were pacing. Because every few minutes, Beatrice's eyes flicked toward Cabello. Waiting. Halfway through the meal, Cabello placed his fork down. The sound was gentle. Too gentle. "I think," he said, clearing his throat, "this is the right moment." Silence spread across the table like a stain. I felt my spine straighten. This was it. He turned to me then. Really looked at me. Not as a husband looks at a wife. But as a man looks at a decision he's already made. "There are things," he said carefully, "about the future of this family, that require adjustment." Adjustment. That word. It has broken more women than fists ever could. My mother-in-law folded her hands. "Our family," she added, "must think long-term. Stability. Legacy. Legacy. Another word men use when they mean control." I smiled again, slower this time. "Is there something you'd like to say directly?" I asked. Cabello swallowed. I saw fear there. Not of losing me, but of me speaking. We believe, he continued, that certain assets should remain protected. Within blood. Blood. There it was. The word that finally cut. I looked around the table. Suddenly everything made sense. The inheritance conversations. The documents I wasn't asked to read. The subtle reminders that I had married into something, never built it. My heart didn't break. It hardened. Because a breaking heart begs. A hardened one remembers. And where do I fit into this? I asked. Beatrice answered before Cabello could. You've been comfortable, she said. We ensured that. Ensured. As if comfort were a gift, not something I earned. As if my years, my sacrifices, my loyalty were line items. Cabello reached for my hand. I pulled it away. That movement changed the air. Are you asking me, I said calmly, to step aside? His silence screamed. That's when I realized something powerful. They thought this dinner was the end of my chapter. They didn't know it was the moment I began writing in ink instead of pencil. Because what they didn't know, what no one at that table knew, was this. I had already seen the documents. I had already learned the secrets. And I had already decided. I would not leave quietly. People assume silence is weakness. They think the quiet woman has nothing to say, nothing to fight with. They forget that silence is also where listening lives. And I had been listening to my marriage for years. Cabello and I did not begin like enemies. That is the lie families tell when marriages fail, that love was never there. Love was there. It just wasn't allowed to grow teeth. I met Cabello when I was already a woman with taste, ambition, and opinions. I dressed well, spoke confidently, and laughed loudly then. He loved that about me, at first. Men like Cabello often do. Until admiration turns into fear. In the early years, he would watch me get ready, leaning against the doorframe, smiling as I chose my clothes. You make simple things look expensive, he once said. I laughed. That's because confidence is the real fabric. He kissed my forehead that day. But somewhere along the way, his kisses changed. They became approvals instead of affection. Marriage didn't quiet me immediately. It happened slowly. A suggestion here. A correction there. Maybe don't say that in front of my mother. They're not used to that tone. You know how my family is. Each sentence small enough to swallow. Until one day, I realized I was choking. Cabello's family was not loud in their cruelty. They were precise. They praised obedience as elegance. They called submission class. They labeled silence as respect. And Cabello, my husband, became their translator. After the dinner, we drove home without music. The city lights passed like witnesses pretending not to see. You embarrassed me, he finally said. I smiled softly. No, I replied. I refused to disappear. He gripped the steering wheel. You don't understand how things work. I turned to him then. Oh, I understand perfectly, I said. I just don't agree. That was the first time he looked afraid of me. At home, he poured himself a drink. Didn't offer me one. Another sign. You should have let me handle it, he said. You don't know what's at stake. I walked past him, removed my earrings, placed them gently on the table. 12 years, I said calmly. 12 years of letting you handle it. Tell me, what exactly have you handled for me? Silence. Not the powerful kind. The guilty kind. That night, I didn't cry. Crying is for when hope still expects an apology. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying moments I had ignored. The late-night calls he took outside. The documents locked away. The sudden interest in separating finances, for convenience. Convenience for whom? 3 months earlier, by accident, or perhaps fate, I had found something. Cabello had left his laptop open. Just for a moment. And in that moment, I saw my name. Not as a wife. As a risk. I didn't confront him. No. I did what quiet women do best. I observed. I learned about shell companies. About properties registered under family trusts. About meetings where my presence was unnecessary but my signature was expected. They never planned to leave me nothing. They planned to leave me enough. Enough to keep me quiet. Enough to keep me grateful. Enough to keep me gone. The next morning, Cabello acted normal. That hurt more than anger would have. He kissed my cheek, asked about breakfast, spoke of meetings. I watched him. The man I married was still there, buried beneath obligation and cowardice. Do you love me? I asked suddenly. He paused. Just a second too long. Yes, he said. But love doesn't hesitate. Fear does. That day, I went shopping. Not for clothes. For information. I met with a woman Cabello's family underestimated, an old friend of mine, sharp as glass, dressed in heels that announced her presence before she spoke. She listened. She smiled. And then she said, "You're not late. You're right on time." Family politics, you see, depend on one thing. The assumption that women will protect the peace even when it costs them their dignity. They thought I would choose marriage over self-respect. They were wrong. That night, Cabello found me calm. Too calm. "You've been distant," he said. I looked up from my book. "I'm learning," I replied. "Learning what?" "How much silence costs," I said softly. He didn't sleep well that night. Neither did I. But unlike him, I slept without guilt. Because I had made a decision. I would not fight loudly. I would fight smart. Families don't always destroy you with chaos. Some do it with smiles. They invite you to sit closer, pour you tea, ask about your health, all while quietly deciding how much of you they can afford to lose. Cabello's family had perfected that art long before I married into it. I used to believe cruelty needed anger. I was wrong. Cruelty, in powerful families, is administrative. A week after the dinner, Beatrice invited me for tea. Just me. That alone told me everything. Her house smelled like polished wood and control. Every photo on the wall reminded visitors who mattered. Generations of men stared down from frames, confident, protected. No women. Only wives placed carefully beside them, smiling, unnamed. She gestured for me to sit. "You handled yourself, emotionally," she said. "Not well." Emotionally. A clever insult. "I handle myself honestly," I replied. She sipped her tea. "Honesty," she said, "is dangerous when you don't understand power." I smiled. "Then perhaps," I said, "you should explain it to me." Her eyes sharpened. "Marriage," Beatrice began, "is not romance. It is structure. Cabello has responsibilities far beyond feelings." "And I?" I asked. "What is my role in this structure?" She tilted her head. "You are adaptable." That word again. Another attempt at erasing me with elegance. She slid an envelope across the table. Inside were figures. Properties. Accounts. Numbers designed to comfort. "This is security," she said. "If you remain cooperative." Remain. As if I was already leaving. I pushed the envelope back. "I didn't marry Cabello for allowances," I said calmly. "I married him as a partner." Beatrice smiled, thin, knowing. "That is where you miscalculated." What she didn't know was that I had already seen more than she planned to show. What she didn't know was that the documents I found were not accidents. They were patterns. And patterns always tell stories. That afternoon, I attended a family gathering I was never formally invited to. Another sign. I walked in wearing cream and confidence. The room stilled. They weren't expecting me. They were discussing me. I heard my sister-in-law's voice first. "She won't fight," she said. "She's too refined." I stepped forward. "Refinement," I said, "is not the absence of strength." Their faces froze. Oh, how I wish I could frame that moment. Cabello stood. "You shouldn't be here." I met his eyes. "I live here," I replied. "In this family. In this marriage. For now." That was when I learned the truth. Not from him. From his brother. A careless man with a loyal tongue loosened by confidence. "She's temporary," he said, laughing. "The real arrangements are already in motion." Temporary. 12 years. Reduced to a season. The room felt smaller. But my resolve grew. Because now I understood something vital. They weren't reacting. They were executing a plan long in place. Later that night, Cabello confronted me. "You're making this worse," he said. "No," I replied. "I'm making it visible." He lowered his voice. "You're challenging people who don't lose." I stepped closer. "Neither do I," I said. He looked at me as if seeing me for the first time. That was his mistake. Family politics thrives on secrecy. On meetings you're not invited to. On decisions made for you. On love used as leverage. But secrets rot. And rot has a smell. 2 days later, I followed it. A meeting. Private. No wives. No daughters. Just men and decisions. I sat across the street, sunglasses on, heart steady. And I watched my marriage be negotiated like a transaction. That night, I didn't confront anyone. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I wrote. Dates. Names. Transfers. Trusts. Truth has weight. And I was gathering it carefully. Because if family politics taught me anything, it was this. They don't fear anger. They fear exposure. There is a moment in every woman's life when she realizes she has been underestimated for so long that people forget she can move. That moment is dangerous. Not for her. For them. I stopped explaining myself after that. Explanation is a form of permission, and I was done asking. Instead, I refined my routine. Morning walks. Gym sessions that strengthened more than my body. Meetings disguised as lunches. Silence worn like couture. If they were watching, and I knew they were, I wanted them to see nothing but calm. Because calm unsettles people who rely on chaos. Cabello noticed the change. "You seem different," he said one evening. Different. Another word men use when they feel control slipping. "I'm focused," I replied. "Isn't that what you value?" He nodded, unsure. The truth was, I was building something quietly. And quiet things, when finished, are solid. I met with people Cabello's family never bothered to learn about. Women behind desks. Men who remembered names. Professionals who respected facts more than family names. They didn't see a wife. They saw a woman who came prepared. What shocked them most was not my intelligence. It was my patience. I listened. I learned. I documented. I asked questions no one had asked before. And suddenly, the story they had written for me began to wrinkle at the edges. One afternoon, Beatrice called. Her voice was sweet. Too sweet. "We hear you've been busy," she said. I smiled. "I've always been busy," I replied. "Perhaps you just never noticed." Silence. Power hates being reminded it missed something. The family dinner invitations resumed. Strategic. Measured. I attended every one. I dressed immaculately. Spoke minimally. Observed everything. When people feel safe, they reveal themselves. Cabello grew restless. You're making them nervous, he said. I thought they didn't lose, I replied lightly. He didn't laugh. He was beginning to understand. The night everything shifted, it didn't happen at a table. It happened in an office. Glass walls. City view. Late hour. Cabello stood across from me, papers in hand. They want this finalized, he said. Divorce. The words sat between us. Clean. Cold. I won't fight you, I said. Relief flashed across his face. But relief is premature when it arrives before the truth. I'll just make sure, I continued, that everything is honest. His breath hitched. What do you mean? I slid my folder across the desk. The room changed. Names. Dates. Transfers. Structures. Everything they thought invisible. Cabello sank into the chair. You were never supposed to see this, he whispered. I tilted my head. You should have married someone less observant, I replied. For the first time in 12 years, he looked small. Not because he lost money. But because he lost narrative. Family politics survives on controlling the story. And I had taken the pen. Power always believes it will be confronted loudly. With shouting. With tears. With threats. So when truth arrives calmly, dressed well, and carrying receipts, it doesn't know how to respond. The meeting was called under the pretense of resolution. That word again. Families like Cabello's love words that sound final without being fair. A neutral space. Lawyers present. Faces composed. I arrived early. I always do. Because arriving early gives you the chance to control the air before others breathe into it. Beatrice entered last. Dressed in authority. Wearing certainty like perfume. She looked at me as if I were already gone. I returned the look with interest. Cabello sat beside me. Not touching. That space between us said more than vows ever had. The lawyer cleared his throat. We are here to discuss an amicable separation, he said. Amicable. Another word used to soften theft. They spoke first. Of generosity. Of provisions. Of fair arrangements. I listened. Nodded. Let them finish. Because when people talk long enough, they reveal the assumptions they're standing on. And assumptions collapse beautifully. When it was my turn, I didn't raise my voice. I didn't accuse. I simply opened my folder. This, I said, is a timeline. Faces shifted. This, I continued, is a pattern. Silence deepened. And this, I said, meeting Beatrice's eyes, is intent. Documents moved across the table. Trust structures. Asset transfers. Signatures that assumed ignorance. Beatrice's smile faltered. Just slightly. Enough. This is inappropriate, she said. I smiled. No, I replied. This is inconvenient. The lawyer adjusted his glasses. These arrangements, he said carefully, may require reconsideration. Power hates that word. Cabello didn't speak. He couldn't. Because now the room saw him clearly. Not as a victim of love. But as a participant in erasure. Beatrice leaned forward. What do you want? She asked. Not what is fair. Not what is right. What do you want? The currency of power. I took a breath. I want what I built, I said. Confusion rippled. I want my contributions recognized, I continued. Not as kindness. As capital. They hadn't prepared for that. Women like me aren't supposed to understand leverage. And, I added gently, I want the truth documented. Cabello looked up. That scared him more than numbers ever could. The meeting ended without victory. But it ended without loss. And in family politics, that is progress. Outside, Cabello stopped me. You planned this, he said. I looked at him. I survived this, I replied. There is a difference. That night, I slept deeply. Because I had finally spoken, not with my voice, but with proof. There is a strange quiet that comes after battles no one sees. Not the quiet of loss. But the quiet of finally standing on ground that does not move beneath your feet. That was the silence I woke up to. The settlement took months. Not because I fought. Because they hesitated. Power always hesitates when it realizes the person it dismissed has learned its language. Cabello's family didn't apologize. They recalculated. And that, in their world, was the closest thing to remorse. Cabello moved out quietly. No drama. No speeches. Just boxes. A man leaving a life he thought would always orbit him. The night he took his last suitcase, he stopped at the door. I never meant to hurt you, he said. I looked at him, truly looked. You meant to protect yourself, I replied. The hurt was just collateral. He nodded. Because some truths don't need forgiveness. They just need recognition. I stayed in the house longer than expected. Long enough to remind myself that space does not belong to men, it belongs to whoever refuses to disappear. Then I left on my own terms. Not because I was pushed. But because I was finished. People ask me now if I regret anything. If I wish I had spoken earlier. If I would choose differently. I tell them this. Silence taught me strategy. Pain taught me clarity. And underestimation gave me freedom. I walk differently now. Still stylish. Still composed. But heavier, in the way diamonds are heavy. Earned. Family politics didn't break me. It revealed me. It taught me that love without respect is a negotiation already lost. And that dignity, once reclaimed, cannot be repossessed. If you're listening to this and you feel invisible in your own marriage, your own family, your own life, understand this. The quiet woman is not empty. She is gathering.